And we're live. Yep. Hello out there in Packer Nation. Welcome to another edition of the Absolute Packer Podcast. We are on episode 92, where we anxiously await the NFL draft, which is coming up this Thursday, just a couple days away. I'm going to call this episode, or we are going to call this episode, Guteé Speaks, because Brian Gutekunst finally came out, GM of the Packers, and talked to the media. It had been a long, long time since the end of the NFC Championship. And said some things, which basically means he didn't say much at all. But there were a couple things we can discuss there, and then just some stuff leading up into the draft. So, as always, I am Andrew Hetzel, and with me, as always, is Jeremy Outla and Ellie Christensen. What's up, fellas?
I think I'm gonna do a Guteé speaks.
Yeah, buddy.
Exclamation question mark.
Okay. I guess our aim is to confuse,
to elaborate on what you're saying.
Yeah, really. We want to confuse and obfuscate for all our listeners now. They're going to say, "What the hell are they doing?" But hey, that's how we roll, right?
They already know how we roll.
Yeah. Our craziness is part of our brand.
We should have our phone number on our T-shirts, though. So if we
still gotta
good.
The next time we do T-shirts, we gotta have some contact info on there.
Might help. We need to have a call to action on our T-shirts. CTA on the T-shirts. All right, I'll make a note of that. So yeah, I mean, just hopping right into it. Brian Gutekunst. I can't remember. Truth be told, I didn't see all. I saw little snippets of it, and I heard some stuff on social media of what he did say, but I don't know how long he talked for. He mentioned some. I guess he showed some of his cards, not much, about what their short-term plans are for Aaron Rodgers and the transition to Jordan Love, and talked a little bit about, I believe, Jair Alexander and what they plan to do with him, his fifth-year option, and hopefully extending him. And I mean, in terms of immediate Packers news leading up to the draft, this is it. Things are going to get hot and heavy, as Elaine Bennis would say on Seinfeld, after the draft. So we're just a couple days away. But I don't know if you want to expand on any more of that, Jeremy.
Yeah. I mean, Goot really didn't talk about anything that's earth-shattering, but he did point out a few things. And number one was the Aaron Rodgers saga and where that's going, 2021, 2022. And he kind of said that Aaron's our guy, and he's excited to see what this team will do in the next 2 years.
Sounds like a GM, right?
Sounds like a GM, but
like a politician, really.
Yeah,
Aaron's our guy for the next couple of years. We're excited with the team we have. I did not have sex with that woman. Well, sorry, I couldn't help myself.
No, you couldn't.
All right, go ahead.
You could.
Oh, so now we're talking about Bill Clinton. Like, what is there to say? Look, with Rodgers, I think Gutekunst said something to the effect of he's with us for the next couple of years. He's under contract through 2023. How he screwed this up? Okay, but I mean, again, you didn't trade up to draft Jordan Love to have him sit behind Rodgers for this entire time. It's inevitable. I think it's going to happen within the next couple of years. This year is going to be telling a lot because look, I mean, if they do really well again, you have to keep Rodgers. You're not just going to hand it over to Love. So many other things still have to play out. I mean, I didn't expect Gutekunst to come out there and say, Aaron's going to be here for another 725 days and then he's out. It's like, what is he going to say? What can he say? And his actions speak louder than his words, and his actions were drafting Jordan Love and trading up to do it in the first round. So that's kind of my take.
I guess if you want to read between the lines, of what he wanted to mean behind his statement, this year is a big year, and next year is going to be a tremendously big year because, there's so much in flux for next year.
Yeah.
Cap. Exactly. And
now, will the cap go up a lot next year, though?
Well, it depends on how everything comes together. Right
I heard
now,
the new TV money, they said it's going to go up a lot. It went down this year because of the pandemic, and they had to scale that back. But I've heard it through the grapevine that it's just going to not skyrocket, but go up a good chunk. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many unknowns with that. We don't know, and it's all tied to how the revenue sharing and how that all breaks down, which we don't know. But if we had to guess, I mean, right now the Packers go into 2022, just moving ahead through 2021, 8 players taking up 80% of their cap. So,
That's madness.
$160
I
million.
mean, it makes sense, but I was, like I said, Ted would never put himself in that position. It feels like, but as you take a step
No,
back, the players that they have under contract that are taking up that chunk, it's like you have Aaron Rodgers, best quarterback in the league. You have David Bakhtiari, best All-Pro left tackle in the league. You have, I imagine Devontae Adams is a chunk of that. Maybe not.
he's a chunk, but here's the top 8, and you mentioned Adams. He's not even in the top 8, so we'll just go from top to bottom.
Damn it,
Or you want me to go from bottom to top? Let's go
doesn't
from
matter.
bottom to top. So,
Okay,
Billy Turner, right around 9 million. Aaron Jones, right around 9 million. Adrian Amos,
and you
just
could
a
argue.
shade.
Go ahead. Go
Mhm.
ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Adrian
I'm sorry.
Amos, just a shade under 12 million. Preston Smith, just a shade under 20 million. Kenny Clark, just a shade over 20 million. David Bakhtiari, right below 23 million, and Zadarius Smith at 28 million. And then you have Aaron, who is just a shade under 40 million. So there are your 8 players taking up 161.14 million of whatever the cap is going to be in 2022.
And I guess on the surface, a lot of that makes sense because, like I said, Rodgers, Bakhtiari, Aaron Jones, the top 5 back. Amos is a little surprising, I guess. The Smiths, they're high price free agents. I guess that doesn't surprise me so much. Zadarius Smith, he's probably, would you say he's top 5 edge rusher?
It depends on who you throw in that
Yeah. I mean,
comparison.
Preston Smith, no. So you could say he's making too much, but Zadarius Smith, we'll say top 10. I mean, he's in the top 10. But I guess that makes sense. And again, what percentage of the cap is Rodgers by himself taking up? Almost 40 million by himself. It's like,
Well, let's just say the cap goes up to 200 million next year, and his cap figure is 40. That's 20%, right?
geez.
So one player. So that's why I think in the next few weeks after the draft, there's going to be a lot of movement going on in Packer land, and I think one of those things that has to happen is somehow moving this money around for Aaron, because tremendously they're in a huge bind next year, and how they reworked Zadarius Smith's contract this offseason kind of foreshadows
Or you
the
mean Preston
extension
Smith?
probably next. No, Preston
You mean
Smith took
Preston?
a reduction. Zadarius Smith took a restructure.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So they're completely different tangents of the contract world. But Zadarius Smith is probably going to see a contract extension probably in the coming off season, just based off of what his cap figure is going to be. And Preston Smith, I'd be really, really surprised to see him around if he goes through another year and has a handful of sacks like he did last year. So, but Adrian Amos does not surprise me because they backloaded that contract. They wanted the immediate cap hit or relief when they signed him. And they did that with all 4 guys. They did that with all the Smith brothers,
In
Amos,
his
and Turner.
defense, he played incredible at the end of last year. He played great. He was really ascending.
Both
So
their safeties, really played
that's
well.
true.
Like Savage's
Amos played.
trajectory.
Amos played out of his mind in the NFC Championship
Mhm.
game. He was one of the few who played outstanding. Yeah.
He's one of the guys in our secondary we could rely on to actually make tackles on a
Yeah.
consistent basis. So
Yeah, and make
that's
turnovers.
a hot commodity.
Turnover plays too. Yeah. And so going to next year, like you said, I mean, you also have looming is Jair Alexander's extension. He's going to be the highest paid cornerback in the league. He's probably one of the best. He's going to be up there, top 3, top whatever, if not the. And then Devontae Adams. he ain't going in a lame duck year. That's not happening. I don't see that happening. So add on top of that stuff, then you have that. So yeah, it's 2022 is going to be nasty
That's why
cap wise. There's just no way
it's gonna
around it.
be nasty, and that's why I really no, and I mean, there is a way, it just takes a lot of movement.
There's a way.
But I
You
think that's why
elevate the Manhattan Project, also known as Jordan Love, to
the Manhattan
QB1.
Project well,
There is a
if you
way.
wanna make that move, go right
Yeah,
ahead, but he's gotta show it.
Goody's sitting in his office. He is like, there is a way, and he turns and they pan to the corner, and there's Jordan Love wrapped in bubble wrap in the corner. Like, cut him open, unleash the beast.
Well, he'll get his chance this year. We'll get to see what he can do. The biggest thing I think, if we kind of read into what Guteé talks about, there could be a bigger role for Darnell Savage. I mean, it would not shock me if they draft a safety in the first round, just because of the fact that they're talking. What's that?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh,
I'm
I was just
perked up
mentioning
when
that
you said that.
it would not shock me that if they draft like a player like Trevon Moehrig, if he falls to 29, just because the Packers have always seen extreme value in their secondary. They have always kind of undervalued their front seven. So if he were to fall there, that would allow them to move Darnell Savage into the slot, take care of that slot DB,
Mm-mm.
and then all they have to worry about now is that outside corner, which would strengthen them significantly. So there could be an internal play there, depending on how they want to shake it and how the
That's
draft
interesting.
plays out to them. But it sounds like they really want to move Savage away from being a center fielder back into more towards the line and covering receivers and just being more flexible with where he can play so that he can make more plays, which is his MO.
Okay. No, that's
We
interesting.
saw that end
And
of the last year too.
the
So
that's true. He definitely ascended. The last 4 games or so, Savage is looking really good.
Mhm.
The whole draft industrial complex. Some of the things I see out there every now and then on YouTube, like some video will come up recommended. It's like Packers looking to trade Jordan Love. Are one was like the Broncos that might trade for Jordan Love. I'm like, where is this crap coming from? And then watch it happen. He gets traded, and
Boredom.
you're like, I guess
right, boredom.
boredom and clicks. I guess clickbait and boredom.
Yeah.
Right? Got to get those
Did you
clicks.
click on it?
Well,
No help.
well, and let's be perfectly honest. The Packers, and you kind of touched on this, Andy. They conduct business behind closed doors, and they don't let anything escape. So everybody wants to have that first, prediction on what they're going to do, and that's what this team has forced fans and prognosticators to do. Is I'm going to have this big, epiphany, and I'm going to figure out that Jordan Love is going to start in 2022. And
Yeah.
because we don't know,
They should
they
have
don't give us
maybe
any
they should just
hindsight.
have maybe they should just have Mike Florio announce the draft pick. Like the
Why not?
biggest
Why
Packer
not?
hater there is. Have you seen some of that
Yeah,
guy's
Mike
drivel
Florio,
that he puts out
call,
there? He hates the Packers.
uh,
It is like he doesn't even
him
hide
and
it. It's just ridiculous. Him and
yeah,
Cowherd.
him and Colin Coward. Yeah.
Yeah, Cowherd's such a freaking blowhard. It's just some of the stuff they start going on. It's I don't know,
He's
but
got to fill
whatever.
up so much airtime, though.
That's exactly what it is. You have to like
You
He does.
manufacture.
He
if
does.
you
You have
had to
to
talk
basically
that many
manufacture
hours a
news.
week,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you'd start just making weird, crazy things up too. I don't know.
Yeah, when you see all those
We
zeros
all
in the
do.
paycheck, you're like, I'll keep doing it. Hell yeah, baby.
Yeah, right.
Um. So yeah, I mean, draft is this Thursday. Now, is it a 3-day event or 2-day? I can't remember.
It's a 3-day.
Oh, the
They
NFL,
will
baby.
start Thursday, go
It's
Friday,
gonna go
and then
turn into
end on Saturday.
a 7 day. At some point they're just gonna do one round a day. They're gonna keep extrapolating it out.
It wouldn't surprise me
One
because
round per night. That'd be hilarious.
well, just think about this. The first round averages around 4 to 5 hours
That is
every year
madness. And the Packers,
on the lower end and most
they're gonna probably trade out and everything, and we're gonna get all whatever. Or they're gonna trade up and draft that punter out of Georgia Tech that I showed you guys. Did you see that punter? God, when I saw him, when I saw this video this guy sent me, and I was like, this guy is incredible. And then I was like, wait a minute, this scares me. The Packers might draft him. That's all I kept thinking. I'm like, they're going to trade up and draft him in
Well,
the
that would solve all the
third
special
round.
teams issues.
They showed him throwing like 60-yard touchdowns, and it was just like, he looked like a safety playing punter. He really did. Anyway.
A punter and a quarterback.
Oh, he was.
Takes two birds with one stone.
There you go. There you go. So, yeah, I mean, not much else to really report. We did our mock draft. Was it last week? I can't remember. Man, feels like I can't
2
remember.
weeks ago, I think.
Might have been 2 weeks. I don't know. I keep thinking offensive line could definitely be there. And, as I say that out loud just then, I keep thinking about David Bakhtiari. He's an all-pro. They just signed a huge extension. He's going to be here, but he tore his ACL late in the season, obviously. And look, that guy, I would be stunned if he doesn't miss at least 4 games next year. The first 4 games.
It's possible, but the
And
way
part
that
of
they're
it is
talking
because
right now, he is.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's possible, but the way that they're talking, he is months ahead of his rehab. I don't know if you saw the video of him and Aaron Rodgers shadowboxing.
Nope.
But he was putting a lot of weight on his front foot, and that's the one that he tore up. So,
part of me,
you know,
I see what you're saying, but part of me looks at the Packers and it's like they are so conservative medically, and they just signed him to a humongous contract. They are, if they're going to err on the side of caution, which they do anyway, they're going to err on the side of like frickin' double secret probation caution with him. I would be stunned if he's not on the pup to start the year, to be honest. I really would. So, and I mean, so
yeah, I can see both ways.
Tackle depth, is perilously thin now that he's hurt, obviously. So I think offensive tackle is a very real possibility. But again, who the hell knows? I have no. And my gut says offensive line or cornerback for in the first round.
I can tell you straight up that their first round draft pick will be any position but quarterback. That much we do know.
Now you're going out on
hot
a limb.
take.
He's going, hot take, going out on a limb.
Oof. Yeah.
Could you just
breaking
for
news?
Just for the sake of, could you imagine? I mean, just for the sake of, just to break the internet, if Gutekunst traded up for another quarterback, he's like, oh, I like this guy better.
That would be amazing.
this guy's good.
You get the best player available.
I think fortunately that won't
exactly best player available if it's a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm just doing what I told.
Yeah. I think to our benefit, the top 5 quarterbacks will be drafted in the top 10, so we won't even have a shot at getting that.
Here's an interesting question. I know. Here's an interesting question. Say they do trade up. When that happens, if it comes in, they go, oh, the Packers are trading up, and say they're trading up into by around 10 picks. Who or what position do you think they'd be trading up to draft?
Oh my God.
That's a total hypothetical, but I'm just in my head. I'm like, who would they make a move for?
There's a difference between what I feel they would truly go for and what I feel like they should go for. If they should go for, I would venture to say Christian Barmore, because he's the only first round capable defensive lineman in the whole first round. And that would assure that they would most likely get him. If it's not him, I mean, it could be a roundhouse of many players, a tackle. Which
I think it won't be a wide receiver. I think it won't be a wide receiver, and it won't be an offensive lineman. I think it would be a defensive back. If they trade up, I think they're trading up for a defensive back.
Yeah, and I think somebody like Greg Newsome.
It's not going to be an inside line. We can strike some certain positions off, right? It's not going to be an inside linebacker. It's not going to be a punter. It's not going to be a quarterback. I'd be stunned if it's a wide receiver. So it's I think it'd be a defensive back. It's not going to be a running back. It's not. It's going to be either be a defensive back or maybe an offensive lineman. That's who I think it would be. I don't know who, but I think it would be a position wise. I think that's what they'd be doing. Now, if they did that for that defensive lineman you're talking about, That'd be something, because I mean, that obviously would scream of need, total need.
Mhm.
Like not letting the board fall to you at all or getting value. You're just like, we got to get this guy. He's the only first round defensive line we have in our grade. We got to go up and get him. I don't know.
Mhm. And I mean, they don't come out and say this, but they've been to Greg Newsome, who's a cornerback from Northwestern. They've been to two of his workouts. From what I've gathered, they've only been to about a handful of players at two workouts. So, would you say the interest level is quite high there? Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is.
Do you
So,
know the other players
um,
that went to multiple workouts?
um, that's the only one that I heard of
The
off
Georgia
off the
Tech
top of my head.
punter, I'm pretty sure. I'm
I mean,
kidding. I'm
why
kidding.
not?
I'm kidding.
Why not?
Fake news.
He, but
Really.
but he could be a
They show up
quarterback
there. He
and
goes, well, what
punter.
do you want? You want to see my hang time? They go, no, we want to see you throw those touchdowns. We heard you can throw touchdowns. um, yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
if
know.
they trade up, it's gonna. I would say defensive line or offensive tackle or
Okay.
cornerback. Those are the three positions.
Yeah. The defensive line, I'm coming around more to that. The thing would be if they trade up and it's not your guy, but it's a defensive lineman. Oh boy, that would be reach, reach, reach. We're talking like, it sounds like it would be reach, reach, reach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, honestly, I think we just have to come to this realization that whoever they draft is going to help them. I mean, you have to have that confidence
That's a
because
funny statement, isn't it? We have to come to this realization that the player that they're going to draft will help the team because we were so triggered last year with the first
well,
pick
I mean,
that we're
and that's
just
the thing.
hoping
Like
that it'd
they
be a player that'll help.
right, but I mean,
No,
they
I get
put the
what you're saying.
flyer on their player
I get
last
what you're
year.
saying. It's
You
just a
know,
funny statement the way it sounded.
it is.
We're going to
It
have to
is,
cope
and it makes
with
you
the
want.
fact that we're going to draft a player that will help us.
Yeah,
That's funny.
I try to shed light on the not so obvious things, and that is one of them.
No, that's what you said is like it is in a way it's like Packer fans in a nutshell, because it's like we have this weird fear that they're going to do something stupid, and
Mhm,
especially after
mhm.
the Jordan Love pick, you're just like, yeah,
Do you think that they go into this like super rational, very well thought out plans, and then some of these, GMs and the staff just the pressure gets to them, or do you think that
yeah, I'm sure that happens, and if people say no, they're lying.
or
It's probably
or
just
is
tough
it
to know
not that
who's
big?
doing it or
I
when,
mean, or is it not that big of a deal to them? Like, do fans make it a big deal more than they do? Or,
That's a good
I
point.
mean, I don't know.
I don't know. That's the mystery of it, right?
Yeah.
That's the mystery of it. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's an interesting point. Maybe it is. Yeah.
I
For
think
all we
I
know,
think
they
the
got monkeys slinging poop at a wall,
oh my god.
and they're like,
Well,
whoever
that's the
throws it the
cliche, right?
highest.
I mean, you've heard that before. That monkeys picking stocks do as well as the average stock analyst. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure the same is true of the NFL. Yeah. So
Yeah. But no, I'm sure there have been some interviews I've seen here and there where like they're interviewing a GM or somebody affiliated with a team like years ago, and they basically admit they're like, yeah, in that draft we were like, we screwed, we our heart overcame our head completely, and they cop to it. But it usually takes like 20 years for them. They have to. It's almost like the JFK assassination. They have to wait till
well,
everybody
yeah, they have to
involved
wait
with
for
it is
everybody to
dead,
cycle
is
out. Yeah.
dead or out of the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
so then they
Yeah.
can admit to it.
Right. Right.
You know what? The whole JFK
No,
thing.
I
Go ahead.
think that
Oh, go ahead. I was going to go on a big tangent.
JFK conspiracy theory tangent? Are you serious?
No, what I was going to say, since it was, do you remember when they said they were going to like unseal those files? They had to wait like 30 years to do it, and then they did it in like, was it late 90s, early 2000s? And what they unsealed was nothing.
Right.
It was like Geraldo with the frickin' Al
Yeah.
Capone's
Right. Right.
safe.
Right. Right.
We're all like, "Ooh, it's going to tell who did it," and then it was nothing. It was a big nothing burger.
Just
The
like the draft.
Continue.
wow.
But I do remember that, like when they talk, I was all
How
excited. I'm like, here it comes. Go ahead, Jeremy. He wants to talk shop or he wants to talk business. We're over here with our tinfoil hats.
That's deep. That's deep. That is truly deep stuff right there. No, I was just gonna say, any good general manager, because they go around the league and they go to these workouts of players and they talk to all the general managers that are there watching every other player, and they get a good idea what these teams are going to do to begin with. So they already have the scouting report on what, let's say, the teams ahead of them are going to do. So do they conduct their own mock drafts in the Packer facility and go through every scenario so that they can be prepared for it? You bet they do. At least you would hope they do,
I
because
would
you
hope
can't
they
just
do.
you
That's what I
can't
was going to say.
Yeah.
right. You
Yeah.
can't conduct a draft by firing at the wall. You have to be prepared for it because there's going to be some right and left turns that are going to occur. And this year, I mean, they're already talking about this draft is going to be one of the most um, surprising drafts, just because we've had no off season because of COVID, where these teams can actually interview players and get to know them on a personal level, and they're just looking at tape and they become
That's true.
so enamored with them. So there be some surprises starting Thursday. Oh yeah, you bet. Could the Packers be one of them? You bet. But any team that is worth their salt, the front office I'm talking about, they conduct mocks by themselves and they're prepared for mostly every scenario that's going to happen ahead of them.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, when I look back on Ted and the way he did things, like one player that really strikes me as like it's such a hit or miss, or it's like the art and the science mix is Nick Collins. I mean, remember where he went to school? Bethune Cookman. And that guy tracked to be, before he got hurt, an NFL Hall of Famer. He was on track to not be a Packer Hall of Famer. He was going to be an NFL Hall of Famer. That's how good I think he was. And I think how much of his career got robbed. But I remember, it's like, so you wonder, like, who, the Nick Collins pick, it makes me think, who else had Nick Collins on their board at all? You know? And Ted, I can't remember, he was like, I can't remember what round pick he was. He was like a second round pick, wasn't he?
Second round pick.
Think about that. And I remember when they made the pick, I was like, Bethune Cookman. I was like, that okay? And at the time, we were just like, that was Ted's first draft. That was a pick after Rodgers. Hell, he was 2005. But I think about that in the context of, um, you know, an NFL Hall of Famer coming out of Bethune Cookman, and what other GM in the entire league that year had him on their board, period. I do wonder about that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And then people said the same thing about Jerry Rice
Yeah.
because
He went to a small school, didn't he?
he came to it from a double A or a one double A school,
Yeah.
like a Jackson State or something or Mississippi Valley State, I think it was. It was one of those southern small schools.
But wasn't he a really high pick anyway, though?
Yeah, he was a first round pick.
Okay.
But a lot
And
of
I guess,
people had the question. A lot of people questioned it because he did come from a small university that was not well known, and he had really he had no clout because he wasn't advertised.
yeah.
ESP or any sports broadcasting network at that time did not talk about him because he played in the middle of the boondocks. So
Yeah, I got
in
you.
the same level, he was
That's
in the same arena as far as that. Everybody was like, why would they draft a guy from Mississippi Valley State or whatever it is? So it happens.
Yeah, because Ted, I mean, obviously Ted valued Nick Collins enough to pick him in the second round, it goes back to, like, I wonder, did anybody else have him on their board at all, and was anybody else like, oh dang, Ted got Nick Collins out of Bethune Cookman before I could get him? Again, that one pick really makes me think, because I'll just never forget the dinky school he went to, and Ted tried to go back to the well again later with Jerron McMillan. You remember that? Remember that name?
Yeah,
He went to some rinky dinks.
oh, yeah.
And that was a complete miss, and that kind of reminds me of, it's an art, not a science. So much of it, so much of it.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, just think about this. Like, I mean, the Packers. When you think about the Packers, what positions have they, year in year out, been really really good at?
Offensive lineman, it comes to mind.
Okay.
That
Uh,
right up top of my head. It
okay.
seems like
So
they.
in the past 22 years, they have spent 2 first-round draft picks on offensive linemen.
And what I say is, like, collectively in all the rounds, they've done really well with offensive linemen. Not
Right.
necessarily the first. Yeah. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that the position you thought, or would it have been something else? Or I'm just curious.
As far as
Would you have thought a different position group over the past 22 years, or were you thinking offensive linemen as well?
I was thinking offensive line as well,
Okay.
but I was also thinking like safety. Because I mean, we're talking about Nick Collins, and he was a second rounder. We drafted Haha Clinton Dix, and we haven't drafted a first rounder there, in the past couple decades. So he's been the
Yeah.
only
When
one.
when when was what was Leroy Butler's draft status?
Uh,
I don't recall.
he was like a third or fourth rounder somewhere in there. Maybe a second. I think it was a second round actually.
Man, I can't believe it's a crime he's not in the Hall of Fame. And that some of the guys
Yeah.
that are getting in front of him. I mean, when you watch some of Leroy Butler in his prime was like amazing, like how versatile that guy was.
Right.
But yeah, what other safety? That's a good point. Collins, obviously, in the Ted Thompson era.
Mhm.
Darnell Savage looks to be pretty good. They've who's the guy? Shoot, Georgia Tech. Morgan Burnett.
Morgan Burnett. Yep.
Yeah, he was pretty good. I mean, I don't know if he was.
Mhm.
He was. I would say he was above average. Would you say?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't like a Pro Bowler, but he was above average.
No, but he was a solid player.
Yeah. He got drafted Super Bowl year. Remember, tore his ACL. Mm-mm-mm.
Mm-hmm. Yepper.
Where did Morgan Burnett play?
Georgia Tech.
Yep, my hated rival. Everybody who's a UGA fan knows that Georgia Tech is the most hated rival, without question.
I can understand why.
I forgot that Calvin Johnson went to Georgia Tech.
That's right.
That is
Yeah.
madness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, guy was like, he was. When you think of Calvin Johnson, he was like Giannis Antetokounmpo on the football field. It's like the guy would like each stride was like 10 yards. It was like
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous what that guy was.
I remember watching him go up against Sam Shield, and it was like, oh my God, this
Like,
guy is going to
he had him by
dominate
he had him by
Shields. And
a
he never
foot.
did.
He had him by almost a
He
foot.
never did.
Yeah.
Right.
Sam
Right.
Sam Shields undrafted, and he changed positions. I think he was either receiver or returner primarily at Miami, right?
He was a corner, but he played
But he
receiver and
switched
he
his
did
last
return.
year to be a corner. He wasn't like a corner the whole way.
Oh
Pretty sure.
no, I think the last year or two he was a corner.
Was he? Okay, I'll have to double
Solidly.
check that. But he was undrafted. And I think he was undrafted because he was so green at that position in college. Because,
Mm-hmm.
man, that was another great. See, that was what's interesting, since we're just talking about Packers draft stuff now, history. I think that this can be a good little tangent here. Shields, like, he was probably one of, if not the best, undrafted free agents the Packers have had. And they hit on him big time, obviously, but they for the longest time with Ted, they kept always trying to go back to the well, and it's so rare to basically get a Pro Bowl undrafted free agent player, And part of me is like they just got so enamored with that. I mean, it can happen, but it's rare, and I think Packers proved it out. Because give me some other undrafted free agents who were really good. I don't mean like, I mean, the last one who comes to mind who was pretty darn good was Lane Taylor, but he wasn't that good. He was,
He was average.
yeah, I think his ceiling was pretty much average, it's not bad, but he's an undrafted free agent, and then before that you got, it's just a litany of, do you remember like the Vic Suoto and all these other
Mm-hmm.
like random guys, but they would hype up so much in the offseason, and then they would just, and then one or two of them would make the team, and then they would just disappear. Because that's, that was one of those things that Ted, obviously we talked about. I think that was one of his weaknesses. Is to your point, Elliot, sometimes when you're this draft, by and large, you're a pretty good draft and developer, you think you're better than everybody else, and you kind of think you can do it all the time. Smartest man in the room is what I'm trying to say. You think you're the smartest guy in the room with all this stuff, and it's like I'll find another gem undrafted free agent. When if you're just playing percentages and using stats and stuff, it's very, very rare.
It's very rare, but it's economically viable for most.
Yeah.
Just because we're talking about, how
Yeah.
the salary cap situation is.
Mhm.
And also too, because the draft isn't a guarantee. Let's say you have picks 1 through 7. None of those players are guaranteed to be anything, special. They have to grow into that. So to be able to find undrafted free agents, it's kind of like throwing a quarter in a slot machine and you win $100,000. It's big,
and your risk is low. Yeah, your risk.
Right.
Yeah, the risk reward is very like low risk, high reward. Obviously.
Well, is it
Could
worse
be,
than the
but
draft? I mean,
going.
has anybody done that calculation? Like, I'd like to see that on a spreadsheet.
I don't know.
Now that you bring that up, like
I'm sure. So I'm sure there's something on the internet
right,
somewhere. That's looked at that.
yeah, because it'd be interesting to
And what the
see.
grade?
Yeah,
What's the grading scale? What it's. I'm sure there's a lot of subjectivity because it's like off the top of my head, it's like if you're an undrafted free agent and you like, what's the average career span of a guy who makes a roster? How many games has he played? And then you go from there, and then it's like how many games has he played, and then how many Pro Bowls has he made, or whatever like that. But going back to Nick Collins, he was obviously a second round pick, but if you remember, I mean, he came into his own right around the time of the Super Bowl year, right? And that was 5 years after he got drafted. So, and he improved a lot, but it kind of reminds me of like that he was the epitome of draft and develop under Ted. He was like the archetype, in my opinion, Nick Collins, because he was a small school guy, drafted someone high, really trusted him. He took his lumps early, but then he turned into a fantastic player. And then he was obviously robbed of us, but it took him 5 years to really start, playing out of his mind. That didn't happen overnight. Sometimes I forget he
And
was
that's
drafted in
the
2005.
disadvantage.
I'm like, oh, he was drafted in 2010. I'm like, wait a minute, no, he was drafted with Aaron Rodgers.
Right, right. And that's the disadvantage that these kids from these smaller Division One schools transitioning to the NFL. It's a bigger jump for them because they dominated at a lower Division One level,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
nowhere in comparison to guys that play at Georgia or
no doubt,
Alabama.
no doubt.
So their jump isn't as extravagant as somebody like Nick Collins had to make. So,
And that's the thing with obviously you got to do your homework for sure, but Nick Collins it's like athletes versus football players. You got to think that Nick Collins, he's obviously a pretty good athlete. I wouldn't say he was the best, but his football skills, he was always around the ball, especially when he kept improving, and he was always, making plays. And that's like the difference between a great athlete and a great football player. And if you can marry the two, you haven't. If you have a ton of talent and you're a great football mind and football player and you stay healthy, that's a recipe for a Hall of Famer, basically. How many times?
right.
How many times have
And
I
think
said?
about Nick Collins. Like,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
what'd you say?
Well, I was just going to finish out and say
Oh,
the,
I was
the
just gonna.
league is littered. There might be a slight delay. I'm sorry. The league is littered with great athletes but crappy football players.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
If you can marry them both, you're good.
Oh, right, right. I was just gonna kind of end on the note of Nick Collins. Like Bethune Cookman in Florida is one of the worst football programs in that state. They've never been to a. I mean, the last time they've been to a bowl game, I don't even remember it. So the fact that Nick Collins couldn't make it into Miami, Florida, Florida Atlantic, Florida International,
Florida,
South Florida,
Florida State,
Florida State.
all of them. Yeah.
I mean, and from what I remember on his scouting report, he didn't have any of those schools coming after him in high school, and he made it big.
Yeah.
Did that
Like I said,
motivate him?
he to me, he was, you would think, he's got a lot of intangibles. He is the archetype of the Ted, in my opinion. He's also one of my favorite players. I loved him. Kind of like Elliot, when it was talking about his man crush earlier. Nick Collins is my man crush. But he's the archetype of, in my opinion, he's the archetype of Ted and his system in so many ways.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that. It works. It's been proven to work, and as long as it works, continue to do it.
You know what's funny when you go back to that 2005 draft? That was obviously Ted's first year. His first pick is Aaron Rodgers, and it's like hindsight's always 20/20. But the guts that it took for Ted to take Rodgers at 24 doesn't get talked about a whole lot. But at the time, it took balls to do that.
Especially when he promised Mike Sherman, who at the time the Packers had one of the worst defenses in the whole entire NFL, and he promised Mike Sherman that he was going to get defensive help, and then pretty much wrote Mike Sherman's ticket out of Titletown with that draft pick because that wasn't going to help the team immediately. It was a long-term play, but it led to Mike Sherman going bye-bye. So I mean, I'm sure Mike Sherman, as he sits back and reminisces about that, is just like, I mean, he's throwing darts at Ted Thompson's picture, so
Yeah. Boo-hoo
I
to
think he had
Sherman.
more problems than that.
I think that was one of the best. Yeah, I agree. But I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's he gave Nick Collins in the second round, future Hall of Fame safety. But yeah, it's like that because if you look at the old videos and some of the documentaries about the whole, Favre Rodgers transition, all that, I think Ted got booed mercilessly, and that was his first draft pick as GM. It was like, hindsight is so easy to say, oh, well, it's like that was a gutsy as hell pick.
Oh yeah,
my goodness.
And I remember going to the first family night in 2008 when Rodgers was the number one, and fans literally booed him as he was.
And that's when Favre flew in on his little private jet. Remember with Deanna?
Yes. Oh yeah, he was. Did I tell you that story about him?
Flew in?
So we went to that game, and we were in the box, and all of a sudden we heard this commotion out and back, and we're like, "What the heck?" So I go out there with my daughter, and we walk to the bathroom, and all of a sudden Brett Favre comes out of the bathroom, and he was thanking everybody and all that kind of stuff, but he was right next to us in the box next to us. But I mean,
he wearing Crocs?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look that far down. But it was a great story.
Talk about a man.
I remember how fans. My man crushes you, Elliot.
Continue. Okay? Continue, Jeremy.
There had to be at least 75 to 100 fans out there, and they were all Brett Favre supporters. The majority of them had Brett Favre jerseys on, and there was a hard support line to switch from Favre to Aaron Rodgers. And I remember that family night so vividly because fans were booing the heck out of Aaron Rodgers, and it was his first time leading the team. It was like, what are we expecting here? But
what a weird time. It was.
And then the next day he got traded to the Jets. The very next day.
What and looking back, I told you guys the story that apparently, McCarthy wanted to bench Favre at the halftime of the NFC Championship against the Giants. I mean, talk about guts. That would have taken guts, obviously, but it's like, from what we know now, I think Rodgers would have. I mean, he wasn't as good at that particular moment as a Super Bowl. He still needed a couple of years to develop even more. But I am very confident to say that if they put Rodgers in the second half, I think they beat the Giants. And then, could you
I
imagine
do
us?
too.
Could you imagine a QB controversy going into the Super Bowl?
That would have been awesome. That would have been so
That would
awesome.
have been. Oh man, that would have been. I would have loved it just for the drama and the
Oh yeah.
media BS. It would have been unbelievable.
And what side would you have taken at that point? You know, I don't know. I don't even know how I would have felt if that would have
This
legit
is an
happened.
interesting hypothetical. I'll tell you what. I I went to that NFC Championship game and Favre
He's terrible.
played. He had a great season. He did, but he played horrifically.
Yeah,
And I think I can honestly say I probably would have been more pro Rodgers just because of recency bias and how bad Favre looked.
maybe.
But who knows? That's easy for me to just say
I know.
whatever. But yeah, that would have been. The other day I actually watched on YouTube. It was the game where Rodgers came in against Dallas when they got first real look when Favre hurt himself in 2007, and they had it cut up where it wasn't like it was basically just all the plays, so they cut out commercials and all the in between stuff. It's funny though because Rodgers had long hair and he still held the ball. It wasn't as high as when he got drafted. Because remember at Tedford and like Cal, he held the ball like up by his ear hole. He would bring it back way up here. It was still high, but it wasn't as high. Um, but you could, I mean, looking back, it's like you could tell they knew they had something there, meaning like McCarthy and Thompson. Because when I watched it all, it was like he he obviously wasn't as good as he is now, but he was pretty dang good, and he was playing against a good team. Dallas was a really good team that year. Um, And it also just goes to show how freaking spoiled we are as Packer fans. It's just like, man alive. But it was interesting to see that. My parents went to that game in Dallas.
What game didn't
They were
they go
actually at
to?
that game. Yeah.
Jeez,
Yeah, really.
talk about spoiled.
I do remember my dad coming back. I remember my dad coming back. I remember my dad, well, I wasn't there, but I remember my dad coming back going, Roger's the real deal. And he was all, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, even I was kind of like, whatever. But yeah. My dad is not a Brett Favre fan anymore. He was not happy with what Favre did to the no players above the organization, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff.
I mean, I kind of feel that way too.
But I had to remind him. I go, football and normal business. Yeah, I agree, but at the same time, I'm like, football is a different business. It's like WWF.
It's somewhere in between.
Yeah, I'm being facetious. But he was
Right.
like, yeah, he was like so incensed that somebody dare try to be bigger than the team. I'm like, he's Brett Favre. It's like, of course he's going to do that. His ego is the size of this entire planet. So, yeah, I would expect nothing
Well,
less.
there goes our. He said he was going to be on next week, but I think he's going to cancel it.
Favre?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
he's going to cancel out on us now.
Pussy.
How do you guys really feel? Wow.
I don't know what to say. I don't know what
Pussy.
I'd ask. What would I? Yeah, I don't know what I'd ask him.
Oh my
Let's see what I would
god.
ask.
I know what
Oh
it is.
my gosh.
Uh-oh.
Where would it even stop? There's so much.
What would you
Right.
ask? What would you ask him, Jeremy? What would you ask him,
What the
Jeremy?
heck were you thinking on the very first pass and overtime in that NFC Championship game against the Giants? What were you thinking? I want to know.
Yeah. When you look at the all 22, it's like the only person who wasn't open was Donald Driver. Every other person on the play was open.
Ryan Grant, Donald Lee.
You talk Brett Favre, he looked like, I mean, it was funny. Like everybody was obviously when they cut to Tom Coughlin, the Giants coach, he looked like his skin was like falling off. He was so cold.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really cold, obviously, but it was like Favre, he looked like he was 90 years old and he wanted to be anywhere but Lambeau Field. It was so awful.
Oh yeah.
It was just,
Yep.
Yeah, and it sucked because
Yeah, he
obviously
had
he was
what
great. Favre was great that year, but he cost us a trip to the Super Bowl.
he was
Did.
instrumental in us getting that number 2 seed that year and being 13-3.
No
But
doubt.
yeah,
He
he
played great.
lost that game
But
single-handedly.
but that game was Favre. That was completely on Favre. He
Oh
just
yeah. Yep.
it sucked because he had that long touchdown to Driver too, like in the first half, and that happened like right. That was oh man, that was cool. There was a couple good moments there, obviously, but it was just like, but yeah, that I mean, it was a gift to get to overtime, right?
Right, because they
If
missed
we
a field goal.
Yep. And once we got to overtime, I do remember thinking, I'm like, I think we got this. Because I just, for whatever reason, I was just like, I think we got this. And then, like you said, it was like the first freaking play. I'm like, yeah, jeez.
Yeah, as soon as we won the toss and got the ball, and I'm like, yep, here we
It
come
is
for
kind of
overtime.
funny that like we went from the quarterback who all-time interceptions leader to a guy who is the all-time not throwing interceptions leader.
Well, I think that's
Who right now holds the record for
I think that's partly by design. I think he saw that, and
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. But it is interesting.
yeah,
Like the chasm is just
yeah.
when you look at Rodgers' stats, it's like he would literally have to throw an interception on every pass for like 2 years. Or I mean, I'm being facetious, but like on every pass for like 2 years to like get to where Favre was at. It was just
Well,
like,
I mean, I cheered the first time that Rodgers took a sack. Because Favre under that same circumstance would have tried to like
oh
whiff it off to somebody, and it would have gotten
oh
fumbled, picked off. It was he always did that kind of nonsense, and it worked.
yeah,
It worked half
Favre
the
was
time.
always even in his yeah, Favre in his prime was still a victim of his greatness because he's like, it doesn't matter. It's like what's happening. I could still thread the needle and do this, that, or the other, and it's just like it's a stupid mentality, but whatever.
So,
Yep, that's about all I got. I think.
Wow.
Yeah. No, it was an interesting episode. I wasn't sure exactly what we'd talk about, but kind of fun to reminisce about some of that stuff. I mean, look, we need the draft to get here, right? That's what we need.
Right, right.
Up until then, we're kind of twiddling our thumbs in a way.
I'm sick and tired of it.
I know, I am too.
It's
So
fine.
go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go.
Podcast. Chair. I know, right?